Welcome to setting up a Google Calendar. I am Teacher Star, and this project is funded under a grant contract with the state of Tennessee. Thank you, Tennessee. Now, creating your own personal Google Calendar is really as simple as creating a Google account and signing at the URL. So let's go ahead and get started to the process. I'm going to share my screen. And at this moment, you want to load your preferred browser. I have Chrome loaded, and I'm going to be sharing that in just a second here. Okay, so everybody should be looking at the new tab. I do have DuckDuckGo as my default browser, but I am using Chrome. So the first thing we need to do is go directly to the URL, which is the https://calendar.google.com. Or if you're signed into your Gmail account, so if you're already signed into your Gmail, on the top right hand side, you see all these apps. So these are all the apps that the account is accessible to get into and utilize and take advantage. There's the meeting conference, there's the chat, there's news, there's Google Play, the maps. So these are all available here. Now, if we look a little further on the right, we see the Google Calendar. Now, we can certainly go to the URL. So let me switch back to the new tab here. And if we go directly to the link page as we type it in here, and it's going to be calendar. Oh, goodness, calendar .google.com. Okay, and we see it defaulted. This was the last I had opened it, but we can go ahead and click on it, and it will take us to the Google Calendar page. And here we are. We're prompted with the welcome to your new Google Calendar, and we can say got it. Now let's switch back into your Google, or I should say Gmail account. So if you're signed in and you go to the app, which is on the top right hand corner, and we click on calendar, they are identical, right? We see that whether we go directly to the page link or access it of our app. Okay, so here's our default Google Calendar, and now we're ready to begin creating a calendar, and we're going to be also adding events and sharing events, and for private use, of course, or you can share them with others. Now we have our calendar open at this point, and the next thing we want to do in creating calendars, and we can create as many calendars as we wish for organization efficiency purposes. So on the bottom, more like halfway left-hand column, we see the plus sign. I'm hovering over it right here. It says add other calendars. So if we go ahead and click on add other calendars, we're prompted with several options. If we want to subscribe to a calendar, if we want to create a new calendar, which what we will be doing. You can also browse a calendar of your interest from a particular URL, or you can import a calendar if you exported some content from other calendars. So here's where we begin creating the new calendar. And at this moment, we're presented with the window to creating our new calendar, and the first text box is our name. Now in the name field, this is going to be the name that's going to reflect the calendar's purpose. For example, if you're making a calendar for a meeting, maybe we can call it meeting. So we can just go ahead and throw that meetings, right? So this particular calendar is going to be utilized for meetings. Now the description, which is the next entry here, our description for the calendar really allows us the ability to add a little bit more information about the calendar. And even though this is optional, it definitely would be useful if you plan to share the calendar with others. You know, if you want them to look at a particular attachment or a particular report before coming to a meeting or whatever the case might be, description is useful if you plan to share the calendars with others. Now, the next field we see is our time zone. And in the time zone, here we have the drop down where we get to select the correct time zone to ensure that our event that we're scheduling is going to be scheduled for the correct time zone. So this is important. I'm going to leave mine the default, which is Eastern time. And then we can see below it the creator or the owner of this particular calendar. Now, the owner is going to be the person that can manage and add until you can share it and give that person privilege, which we'll dive into in a little bit. So here is the option where we select the blue button, create calendar. And the calendar meetings has been successfully created because we see that right over here now, meetings. So if we got a calendar called Star Key, well, Star K, right? And then for birthdays, and then we have meetings. And then if there's any other calendar that needs to be added, perhaps, you know, we have kids and we have other activities that we want to keep things clean. This is a great way to do that. So multiple calendars is essentially advantage in using the Google Calendar. Now, keep in mind, when we create this Google Calendar, many calendars or anyone has to be created using a desktop. Now, in a desktop, once you create it, then you can add the app on your phone, and then you'll see those calendars in the app feature. But the creation must be done through a desktop. So now we'll go ahead and click on Create Calendar. What happened? Oh, I know, we had already created it. There is meetings, right? But if we wanted to create a new calendar, then we can proceed with that and add as many as we need. Okay, now let's see. The next thing we want to do once we've created the calendar is start sharing that particular calendar, right? So we'll go ahead and click on the main calendar, which is here, calendar settings, and we're looking at all the settings available here. And in the settings, we want to locate the share, so the option to share my calendar, right? So if we scroll a little further, we see the next thing is auto accept invitation. Do you want people to accept, you know, automatically accept it, that does not conflict with your schedule? All invitations to this calendar can be automatically added, or do not show invitations. So those are the options for the auto accept. But if we scroll down a little bit further, we see here access permission. So this is where we get to choose whether we want to make it public or private. Now, keep in mind that it has to be public, and you can share it to those people, and those people can only access your Google Calendar and anyone else. So this is if it's marked public, okay? And then you can get the shareable code. And so this is the code that you would copy it and send it to whomever that you need to share this calendar with, okay? Now, if we scroll a little bit below that, we have the option to share it with specific people. Now, with certain people here, this would allow us to click on add here, add the person, and you can add their email or name, and then the permission. So this is where we delegate responsibility. And as the original creator, the owner of the calendar, it's our responsibility to create those events and share them, right? But once we share them and we give permissions to someone else, then that particular person can modify, they can change, make the events changes, they can manage and share the particular event with other groups. but that's where you handle the permission. So that is vital, in particular to business emails. If you're given permission to someone to manage a calendar, they need to have the proper permissions. Otherwise, they will be restricted. Now, the next thing we see here is our events notifications. And this is if we want to receive notifications for this particular event. And this event is for calendars, right? So we can add the notification and we can decide, you know, as far as when to be notified, 10 minutes before the meeting, 15 minutes, whatever it might be. It's a drop down and then a cursor up and down to change the timing. Now for the minutes, there is a drop down and you can also change your notification from minutes to hours, days, and weeks. It's just a drop down. And so a little further than that, we have all day event notifications. And this is where you can add if there are other notifications to avoid any conflicts. And so the next thing we're looking at is the integration for notifications. So for new events, changed events, this is a drop down to none or yes. Now notification, so you would be notified via email if a new event is created. You would be notified via email, assuming that we have marked that as an email. So then anytime for this particular meetings calendar, anytime a new event is created, a notification will be sent via email. And a notification will be sent for any changed events or canceled events or events responses or daily agendas. These have to be turned on from a calendar main setting, just by clicking on the drop down arrow and choosing email. If they're set to none, then we're not going to be notified if any of these events change in this particular calendar. So it is important to indicate if we are interested in being notified or not. Integrating the calendar. So here is our calendar code, right, that we can share. And here is the public URL. So the URL, if we just copy that and have a new page, drop it in here, it takes us to our calendar that we just created. And we can see on the top left-hand side, it's the calendar that we called it. It's for meetings, right? So let's go back to our main calendar here. And we can customize, you can embed a code to the calendar web page. So if we click on customize, then here we can customize things how we prefer. But this is where all that can be done. And whether we want to show all these indications in the calendar, the title, the navigation date, print, tabs, and so forth, all that is managed in our Google embedded feature. So that's right under the settings, integrated calendar, then right below it is the customizable for the embedded code. Okay, now, so let's add some events, right? Let's go ahead and add Explore calendar. Oh, that's export. Let's move that. Okay, all right. Here's our calendar. And here we can see the widgets that we saw before, our agendas, monthly, weekly. All right, going back to our calendar. Okay, and we are going to set some see, we'll do it for that. And event, so this is where we add maybe luncheon, and we can even add it as a reminder. And here is where we change which calendar it is. So this is where it's important that we choose the appropriate calendar. Here's meetings, there's luncheon, maybe do luncheon. Yeah, maybe we can just do luncheon at noon. How about that? And we hit save. And so we see that there. Now that should be reflected. You want to get better notifications. So this is once again, because we didn't turn some notifications to be provided. So they have to be given permission. See, as we mentioned earlier, we'll just say ask later. Now, if we go back to our calendar, let's refresh this and see if we see our luncheon. There is our luncheon that we scheduled in. So once again, the calendar is here, and we've created it using the left plus sign, and that gave us the ability to add a new calendar, which we did, and we called it meetings. So you can see I got several calendars, right? We have one called star, one for birthdays, one meetings, one for reminders, one is tasks. So let's add another event. Let's randomly maybe do on the 30th Friday, and we'll make this a reminder. And as soon as we make it as a reminder, if we notice that it's not relevant to a particular calendar, right? So this would be a friendly reminder on a particular something we need to be reminded of. And now I'm going to go back to the events, because in the events, the crucial part in adding and then sharing the event is choosing the appropriate calendar. So let's say report review, right? Something like that. Let's do that. And then let's say the timing. So we're going to choose on the date, and we'll say it's Friday, and then the time, and we'll say 10:30 to 11:30. And if this is a particular report review being done on a particular time, meaning repetitive. So if it's reoccurring, this would be ideal. You can have it repeat every week or whatever day. We can customize it to our preference, weekly, monthly, daily, yearly. That's where we can do the repeat. That way, that avoids that redundancy, right? And saving time to do something else. Now, once this is selected, the next thing we need to do is add, right? So you want to add the people that you are going to be sharing this with, this particular event. See if it'll load up. So I don't have my contacts shared. If you're sharing your contacts with your calendar, if you click on this icon, the human image icon, this will load up all your contacts, and you can just choose the people. So there is a more efficient way if you're integrating your contacts with your calendar. You can also add a Google Meeting video conference. So this would be helpful if you're if you are meeting with people that are also remote and want to be a part or are a part of that particular meeting, right? They would have the ability to join using the Google Meet. So it would be a conference on this particular report review. The next is location. So location is if we're physically meeting somewhere, then we can go ahead and add that address in, and then we can add a description and an attachment. So if this particular calendar is work related and we have some kind of finance report that we all need to review, right? It's vitally important to upload that particular document or attach it to the event so that is available to everybody in that meeting. Not only at that meeting itself on that time, but also for review prior to the meeting, right? And so if we scroll further, then we get to choose which calendar this is going to be. So right here, we click on the drop down color, the name of that calendar. and you choose the calendar, so it's meetings. And then we can, of course, change the coloring if we to keep it, lively. And so from here, we can just manage our notifications. And if we want it to be visible, so once again, public would be accessible to anybody. So anybody that you share this particular calendar with, they can all access the public calendar. If we make it private and we share it with a group of people, only the people that have a Google Calendar can view your shared calendar. So that's for private. Private is Google to Google Calendar only, and public is anyone. So you can share it to anyone. And so once that's made, we can choose our notification if we want to be notified. And then from there, we just change the timing. So we change the timing just by simply selecting the field in relation to the timeline here on the left-hand column. We see the timeline. So that's how sensitive it is, particularly if you have a touch screen. So be cautious of that, right? Because we can accidentally just tap in the wrong field and that changed our meeting time, right? So if I accidentally just tap there and I hit, save or just stepped out of it. So if I hit close, then it asks me if I want to discard. So there, I discarded it. It removed everything. So keep in mind with pop-ups, discarding would be removing it, and then timing. And so I just selected randomly on a different date, which gives us the ability to add an event and share it once again. Couple things to mention here in reference to the Google Calendar. In the event of adding a guest, when you're inviting people, remember, if you want to include certain people on the invitation, you have to add their email address that you want to include, right? Because we're sending this to their email, so they're going to be needing to have an email is what I'm addressing here. Now, what's great about having multiple calendars with Google Calendar, once again, you can do multiple things. You can create new calendars and then put each appointment or meetings on the appropriate calendar. Particularly since each calendar will have its own name, you then don't need to worry about having to put things in the wrong field. You can even color code them as we saw earlier. So if we add a new event and we say review, and let's just randomly choose a time. And this is going to be for meetings. And we can change the color coding to associate what's what if that's necessary. And so if we go back to our calendar and we refresh this, we should see the new added event. And so there it is, 10 a.m. review. Let's change that to 7 a.m. So if we go back to here, we just select it by clicking on the event, and then we're prompted with a option to edit it. So we just click on that pencil icon, let's say yes to that, edit the event. And so in the edit event, we're prompted to review the information for that event to edit, and we can change the timing here. And we'll do 7 a.m. And on the right-hand side for the guest, so when you're adding the guest, we need to include their email. And then we see the permission below that, our guest permission, the ability to modify the event, to invite others, or see the guest list. This is where we can restrict or remove. So we can add or remove our permissions here for the people that we're sharing this event with. And then on the left-hand column, once again, here's our ad description along with our attachment and the color coding. We can also change that to something else just to get a reflection of it. We'll save that. And so here, somehow, I think I did it for an all day, right? Because we can see that it's stretched from, I was on a different day, 10 a.m. to 7 a.m. Not going to that one, right? But if we go to edit, time zone. Oh, I see. The other way. I meant 7 a.m. There we go. Reversed. That's why it was an all day thing. And maybe we can do 7 to 8. And as soon as we save that, we should see that reflection immediately, right? We see that right there. See, we see that reflection. So I'm refreshing the calendar so that it's visible to see the changes that we're making here. Now, other things to take advantage of when it comes to Google Calendar is the daily email. As I mentioned earlier, it has to be turned on, right? But you'll be notified via email. So you'll get an email through your inbox from Google on a particular time or day you choose, which essentially captures your daily activities for that calendar. Now, keep in mind, you can also download the app, the mobile app. And once you have the mobile app, then you'll be able to see all these calendar features that has been added, whether it's in the meetings or in Star Calendar, but they have to be added in the desktop first. Then they can be viewed and modified through the mobile app. And that way you have your Google with you, Google Calendar with you at all times for efficiency. So you can download the app and just set reminders. And while having your Google Calendar at your fingertips on your laptop throughout the day, it's wonderful, right? To be able to access that information right there. You'll think yourself, because the app will allow you to add appointments when you're on the go. You don't have to forget about important meetings or lunch dates that you might have made, in the office. So you can set up reminders right there on your phone, schedule them automatically and have them show up in your Google Calendar app, which means that you will not miss anything simply because you stepped away from your computer. Pretty neat. Now, let's see. Keep in mind, we mentioned the utilizing video conference with Google Hangout. So if we go back to our Google account or Google Calendar, on the right-hand side, we have option for items to keep. So here it's going to load up, notes that we wanted to keep. But you also have the ability to add your tasks right through here and your location. And you can also get add-ons right here. Now, let's go back to the apps. Let's close this out. Our apps. And there's the Google Meet conference. And so once again, that's along with your, you can set that up with your events and calendar. And this is where you can set up a new meeting or enter a code or link that's been provided to you to join a particular meeting. Okay. Let's add a couple more events just to get the hang of it. And as far as permission restrictions, so we'll call this annual review, and we'll do it 7 till 9 a.m. And this is going to be repeated maybe annually, right? Once a year. And if we need to find a time, notice what happened. So when we click on find a time, Google Calendar took a glance at our day. So if our day was fully busy and we had a lot of events, that feature is great, where you can see the best time for the meeting conference or conference meeting. but it's open. So that time slot we chose initially, 7 to 9, is open, and we can proceed with that. If that time slot was not open, there would be a conflict indication here. We'll show that on next. So we'll go ahead and do this for the meetings, and we'll color code it that grape. And here's where we add our guest. And once again, when we add our guest, it's important we add their email so that they receive this information. And then we'll make sure that we hit save. Otherwise, all this data entry will be discarded. Let's go ahead and click on more options. So the more options gives us the ability to really look at the event window at a bigger scale. And so if we're happy with what we see, and it's really nice to have an open scale in adding descriptions and also attachments because it's a wider view of that particular field. And if we're happy with what we see, we can go ahead and click on save. And here we see immediately the annual review is in our calendar. Now we're still in the Google Calendar. If we had shared this with other people, this particular calendar, we should see that reflection right here in our calendar. So we're going to refresh. Just going to refresh this. And we see our meeting right here, annual meeting. There, annual meeting, Friday, 7 to 9. And you can click on more details. And the more details is going to load for us the calendar, Google Calendar, with more details on that event. Now let's go back to our Google Calendar, and once again, let's review our settings. And to review our settings is through this menu, the clips, little dot, 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 click on that. And then this gives us the ability to display this only or settings and sharing. That's really where we need to be. But this is where we can easily change the color coding of our calendar. We immediately see that it's orange now. But let's go to the settings and sharing. So the settings and sharing, as mentioned before, here is our access permission entry. So first we mark that box. So making your calendar public will making all the events visible to the world. So including via Google search. Are you sure? And you can say yes or no to that. And sharing your calendar, here's more. And remember, this share link gives us that ability to access the calendar. So if we copy the link and we paste it to our new window, that gives us that calendar contact that we're sharing with. Shareable link to your calendar. Okay, and so once we share that, we need to give that person the permission to manage that, to manage the events in that calendar. So share with certain people. So making changes in managing the calendar by default is going to be the owner, right? So the owner is the person creating the calendar initially. In this case, it's me. So it's going to be the person logged into that particular account. That's the owner. And once we add another person, we can give them, say, Carl, and let's say make changes to events and manage events. And I'm going to use my email, my previous email, the active email. And so here it is, make changes and share and managing sharing. And I'm going to send it. And so it's being sent. And I should see that reflection in my inbox. I'm signing out of that email and signing into the email that I shared it with. I have the dual secure authentication logged or turned on, I should say. So I'm being notified if it's me logged in. I'll resend here, turn it off. There we go. And yes, and that's how quickly I'm signed in using my fingerprint secure way. Now I did receive a not here, so it was not there. And let's go back to calendar here. Okay, there I am. So it's added, right, to Intasar. There is the permission, and let's, all right, let's share that link again. Now there might be a conflict because they're all one and the same person. They're all me, right? I'm trying to send it to me from me. All right, so I signed into my personal email. And so here's what happens when somebody shares a calendar with you, right? You see that I'm being prompted to add a calendar. So if I add a calendar, which I will, we immediately see meetings. I know I saw, there it is. It was just the name. And there's our reviews, review 7 a.m. So we see the calendars, this other stuff for me, personal info. And let's go to settings. Yep, and so here, so this is me logged in from my active Google Calendar, right? And we can see now that I am managing it, which means I can add events and then I can share them to people, and those events would be managed and changed by me because I am the default designated person to managing this particular Google Meeting calendars. So that's how that works. And so let's go back. You are logged out because you can only have one calendar login. So we're going to reload it. And if we notice that it reloaded into my email, so I'm going to sign out of that and sign in back into the Gmail account that we created for the East location. So take a look at their YouTube channel and their Facebook page for all these and any future events. All right, let's hope I recalled the password. I think that's what it was. Close that calendar. And here is protect your account, asking to confirm the identity, which is a great feature and for security purposes. And let's go back to our calendar here. And here's our calendar. But now we see on the left-hand column, my calendar and the person I've shared it with. So I shared it with myself, right? And if I want to unsubscribe, I can just remove them by clicking on that X. And once again, we're cautioned, are you sure you want to remove this person? Because they will no longer have access to this calendar and its events. Other people with access to this calendar can continue to use it. So that means if you're deleting that person's name from a calendar that you shared with or shared to, their permissions and everything else will also be removed, which means it's vitally important to set permissions to someone else or take ownership of setting and managing the calendar event. All right, quick overview So if we want to set up a calendar, and we can set up as many calendars as we desire for simplicity and efficiency. On the left-hand column, you see the plus icon. It says add other calendars. And if we click on it, we're prompted with the drop-down options. And there is create new calendar. And this is where we began creating that calendar. And we had called it meetings, but we can call it whatever we want. Maybe we're in school and we can do one called school, right? School related. And then we can add a description. And the description plays a vital role when sharing this calendar with others, because the more information, the better. And then the time zone. Once again, we want to make sure that we click on the drop down and choose the appropriate time zone so that when we're setting events, they are set for the correct or scheduled for the correct timing. And the owner, so this tells us the owner email address of the user who's creating this calendar. And then we can go ahead and click on create new calendar. And we see on the left-hand column, there's our school calendar. And when we select it, we have all these settings that we can review. We can look at the event notification. So if we want to modify some of these notifications to receive an email alert for any events that have been changed, we can do that by selecting the drop-down. Other notifications, we can also go to the auto correct or auto accept invitations. Calendar settings, which is essentially where we are right now. So, and now let's go ahead and begin creating some events for that calendar. And so there is our school, right? We see school right here. And let's perhaps go to the month of August, Friday, and we'll say math exam. And maybe we want it to be reminded from 8 to 9. Let's say we have it that time. And maybe we're adding this for math exam group study, right? Maybe we can do that, which I also extensively utilized. So now we have set the naming of the event, and then we're gonna go ahead and add the person that we're gonna share it with. So we need to indicate. And if this is going to be involving remote individuals, it would be ideal to have a Google Meeting video conference set up, because that would enhance the engagement and studying and capturing the information we're trying to inform ourselves about. And at the bottom here, we want to make sure that we select the correct calendar, because we share it with those people, they're going to see it, right? And if we don't have the correct calendar selected, those group of people or person is not going to receive that particular calendar. And the color coding for any event can be changed just in a simple drop down. You can choose orange, you can choose any color your heart desires. And then we can indicate whether this is going to be an all-day busy event or not, and the difficulty of it, whether default, the default of it, whether it's going to be visible to everybody or private certain people who have Google calendars. We can also add a notification. And in adding a notification, that just gives us a reminder, and we'll go ahead and save it. And so there's our math exam. And if we're sharing this particular calendar with people, let's go to the calendar code. We should see that reflection. So here is the shareable code. We're going to copy the link, open a new screen, new window, and paste over that link. And voila, now we did create that event for the month of August, and there it is, math exam group study. Easy peasy. Excellent. Now that pretty much sums it up. I certainly have enjoyed myself, and I hope this has been informative. And there's more exciting events. Before you leave, the library also offers free one-on-one sessions. And let's review that screen here for a moment. Okay. All right, so for the West Polk Library, there are free sessions, one-on-one. These are your choice of topics. They're held every second Tuesday of the month from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Their phone number is 423-338-4536. And their hours is on the bottom left-hand side. And remember that if these time brackets, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. do not work for you, you can always contact your local library, and I recommend you follow their Facebook and their YouTube account, because all this in future projects will be presented, and the timing, once again, is very flexible. So if 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. does not work, we can make it work around your schedule if needed. Just keep in mind that there are limited slots, but they are held every second Tuesday of the month for the West Polk. Once again, thank you and have an amazing day.